got the right bitch. No lefty, walking my truth, don't fuck with my step team. Crawl for you, walk, run it, catch me, got a sharp tongue, spit. Tennessee. Now we've been telling y'all that these dumbass anti-trans laws was going to affect all trans people. We keep telling y'all, and y'all still trying to vote on it. Vanderbilt University Medical Center, Tennessee. Honey, the children is suing them. The trans people is suing them. The trans people is suing Vanderbilt University Medical Center, honey. Yes, honey. They didn't release over 100 patient files. Vanderbilt released over 100 patient files, honey, and the children is suing them, honey. I don't mean no harm. I wish I went to Vanderbilt so that I could get a couple coins off the lawsuit, honey. Baby, Vanderbilt. But let me tell you how it started. It started with this MFer named Matt Walsh, honey. Matt Walsh said that him and his team was investigating the transgender child clinic at Vanderbilt in Nashville, honey. Said that Vanderbilt was drugging, chemically castrating, performing double mastectomies on minors. But it gets worse. And then Matt goes on to have a whole thread. He says Vanderbilt opened its trans clinic in 2018. During a lecture the same year, Dr. Shane Taylor explained how she convinced Nashville to get into the gender transition game. She emphasized it's a big money maker, especially because the surgeries require a lot of follow-ups. Keep in mind, Matt followed up all of these posts with video clips on Twitter, right? Now, before we watch these videos, I want you to keep in mind that these are snippets, that nowhere on his Twitter in any way, shape, or form to this day have Matt given people access to these full lectures that he has snippets of. Run it.
Starting in January 1st of 2017, according to the Affordable Care Act, insurance carriers are mandated to cover medical expenses for trans folks. Some of our BUMC financial folks in October of 2016, starting a couple years ago, put down some costs of how much money we think each patient would bring in. And this is only including top surgery. This isn't including any bottom surgery. And it's a lot of money. These surgeries make a lot of money. So female to male chest reconstruction can bring in $40,000. A patient just on routine hormone treatment, who I'm only seeing a few times a year, can bring in several $1,000s. That requires a lot of visits and labs. It actually makes money for the hospital. Now, these I got from the internet, but it's from the Philadelphia Center for Transgender Surgery, which does a lot of surgery for patients. That's how to give you an idea of how much these bottom surgeries are making. And I think this has to be an underestimate. This is for a vaginoplasty. They're quoting roughly around $20,000 for a vaginoplasty, but that doesn't include your hospital stay. That doesn't include your post-op visits. That doesn't include your anesthesia, your OR. So I would think that this has to be a gross underestimate. I think that's just like the surgeon's piece of it, which anybody who's ever been in the hospital knows that that's like 10% of it. And then the female to male bottom surgeries, these are huge money makers. Again, I think this has to be an underestimate, that they're quoting around $20,000 for a phalloplasty. There's been different things that I've read that said it could be up to $100,000. Dr. Winokur, who's our surgeon, says that there's entire clinics where the entire clinic is supported just by their phalloplasties, and that is like a fraction of the surgeries that they're doing. These surgeries are labor intensive, they require a lot of follow-ups, they require a lot of OR time, and they make money. They make money for the hospital.
Now, just in this snippet, being someone who would likely make these kind of speeches to a room full of medical professionals, right? I can tell you that in 2017 and 2018, when we were having these conversations as medical professionals with other medical professionals, we were simply stressing the importance of trans medical care. This is somebody who is simply expressing the importance of trans medical care, and in the process, she is informing them that now trans medical care in their state at their facility is being covered by insurance. Yes, the same trans health care that they're trying to take from us, it was just granted to us. We just started being able to get these surgeries right before they took it from us. Again, that lecture was from 2017, right? And she's talking about the money because realistically we live in a capitalist society. You know, big pharma is a thing. But instead of Matt Walsh wanting to talk about the bigger issue, which is big pharma, the bigger issue, which is insurance in America, the bigger issue, which is medical issues only being taken seriously when there's a dollar amount attached to it. Instead of Matt Walsh wanting to have these conversations, he wanted to demonize this woman in her lecture, Dr. Shane. Matt goes on. Matt posts in the same day, in the same thread, in 2022, Vanderbilt was apparently concerned that not all staff would be on board with trans medical care because of their religious beliefs and consequences, blah, blah, blah. That's what Matt says. Now let's listen to the actual lecture.
If you are going to assert conscientious objection, you have to realize that that is problematic. You are doing something to another person, and you are not paying for the cost for your belief. I think that is a real, I think that's a real issue. So I think, so yes, Vanderbilt, if someone has a conscientious objection to participating in this sort of surgery, it probably have to accommodate you to the extent that you can find another person who can do the job, who doesn't have an objection, other things of that nature. But I just want you to take home that saying that you're not going to do something because of your conscientious, because of your religious beliefs, is not without consequences. And it should not be without consequences. And I just want to put that out there. We are given enormous, if you don't want to do this kind of work, don't work at Vanderbilt.
Now, this is a lecture where Dr. Ellen Clayton was simply stating that now transgender care was being offered at Vanderbilt. A piece of a lecture where Dr. Ellen Clayton was explaining to the staff that now transgender care was being offered at Vanderbilt. She was giving those physicians, she was giving those doctors, she was giving that medical staff the allowance and the heads up that, look, we're going to be treating trans people here now. If you have some moral, personal, religious beliefs that would prevent you from treating transgender patients properly, then we're asking you to leave now. That's simply all that was. That was not her threatening to fire anybody or anything like that. Nothing that she said in that portion of that lecture, in that portion of that speech, is nothing that, people don't follow in their Hippocratic oaths. When you decide to become a medical professional, you are constantly signing waivers and contracts and disclosures and, being insured and all of these things with the promise that and with the security that you are providing proper, equal care to all patients. Somehow Matt Walsh found a way to vilify that. Well, I ain't gonna say somehow. Matt Walsh found a way to vilify that because people want an excuse to hate trans people. And that's just an acknowledgement that at a lot of medical facilities, if you refuse to treat trans people, you're out the door. It's truth. It's facts. It is what it is. Same thing goes for any other patient with any other condition. For those who argue that us trans folks have some sort of psychological condition, I mean, even if it's a psychological condition, it should be treated properly. Stop playing in my face. But Matt went on, and y'all, I'm filling y'all in on this tea because this is how all of these laws got started. Now, you know, I'm going to put the pieces of the puzzle together for you, but this is how all these transgender, protect the trans kids, protect the children from the trans, this is how all this legislation got started. Matt continued on his thread on Twitter, where he vilified Vanderbilt, where he also vilified Vanderbilt's Trans Buddies program. He also insinuated that children having access to an older trans person to assist them with their medical care was unsafe. Let's take a look at a snippet of the Trans Buddy Program Coordinator video.
My name is Sean Riley, and I'm the Program Coordinator for Trans Buddy at the Program for LGBTQ Health at Vanderbilt University. Trans Buddy provides trained peer advocates for transgender patients who are coming for doctor's appointments or other healthcare-related services. Whether you're looking for something that's related to medical transition, such as hormone therapy, or something completely unrelated, like breaking an arm or going to an ENT, we are here to help support any transgender patients that come through our doors. The Trans Buddy program was organically created through the efforts of transgender people and continues to consistently be led by trans people in Middle Tennessee. The Trans Buddy program is a one-of-a-kind in the nation, and institutions are looking to Vanderbilt to replicate and expand programs like ours.
We're not seeking to find solutions often for people's problems. We're just seeking to be there and to accompany and to be a friendly face, and to be a non-medical face in a place where everybody coming in the room is going to be a healthcare provider and may be unsafe.
Sometimes I'm there to be always observing kind of how hospital staff are interacting with the individuals, and again, you know, using correct pronouns or treating the individual with respect.
Again, Matt Walsh found a way to vilify trans advocates and activists who are spending their time in the hospital just to make sure that equality is going across the board. I don't need that. The math don't math for me. If you can explain the issue in the comments for me on why, you know, a trans person having access to another trans person is an issue. One of the biggest issues for us trans people is that we don't have community. We don't know anyone like us. We don't have the proper representation. We feel like we aren't seen enough. Same complaints. We complain to y'all all the time. In a lot of cases, I can tell you from a psychological standpoint that Trans Buddy programs, which essentially like a big brother, big sister program, but for trans people, programs like that can be all the gender affirming care that a patient needs outside of therapy, just to navigate their transness properly and make sure that they're trans. Because there are people who deal with other psychological issues and they grasp onto transness. A very small number of people. We call them detransitioners. There's a very small number of people who grasp onto transness just because of their love and acceptance by the trans community. Because we do tend to love and accept our own. So for a lot of people, a lot of kids, a lot of trans kids, having an older trans person as a mentor, as a guidance through their medical care, may end up being the person that helps them to realize that they're not trans. I don't know how Matt missed that point, because that goes with his agenda. That goes with Matt's agenda to eradicate trans people. And if you don't believe me, keep watching. Matt was on a roll on this thread. Don't worry, I ain't gonna feed y'all Matt too much. This is one of the last little scriptures that we got by Matt today, honey. But Vanderbilt ended up deleting and removing all of their transgender care stuff as soon as the laws were passed in Tennessee. The anti-trans bills were passed in Tennessee. Vanderbilt basically erased and deleted everything from the internet. And I guess Matt took this as fuel for his fire. I mean, Matt, you helped to create laws to vilify trans people, and then you mad when they start taking stuff down to protect trans identities. It's the child. If you a conservative in here, if you a colonizer in here, if you cracking the whip in here, can you please break it down to me? What's the issue? But let's watch the Vanderbilt video.
We can provide gender-affirming hormones on an individual who is on a pubertal blocker, depending on whatever kind of blocker they've chosen or we have discussed with them, or they can present to us at a later stage of puberty, and then we provide the gender-affirming hormones. Previously, the Endocrine Society recommended to start these at age 16, but we all know that would be delayed puberty, right? Not 16-year-olds don't start puberty. So more recently, they did update that to say as early as 14 for compelling reasons. So we have some individuals who have started gender-affirming hormones at 13 or 14 to be more like their peers. Again, fertility preservation and consent are very important to discuss prior to any initiation of these.
Okay, again, I want to add some context to this because, we're going to have the conversations tonight. I got the time and energy. I'm going to add a little context. As she said, regarding gender-affirming care, regarding the child who is binary trans, has severe gender dysphoria, cross-sex hormones would be introduced when I was growing up around 16, 18, depending on the person's particular puberty. Now they've changed it. They dropped it down to 16. They dropped it down again to 14. Keep in mind, these cross-sex hormones, the estrogen, the testosterone, the synthetic hormones introduced into the trans kid system would not happen until a certain point in their pubertal development. It's arguable. I'm going to keep it 100 with y'all because that's what I'm here to do. My personal thoughts, I wouldn't recommend considering cross-sex hormone therapy until, honestly, 17. Just based off of my knowledge of the science, just based off of my own personal experience. Keep in mind, I am one trans person. There are about 1 million of us in this country, right? I'm one. I do not speak for all. I personally don't recommend introducing estrogen or testosterone into your system synthetically in early teenage years. I don't. Puberty blockers are a different thing. Puberty blockers are reversible. The use of puberty blockers are reversible. When you get into introducing testosterone and estrogen into your system, then you start to get the irreversible changes. And realistically, there are people who transition for the wrong reasons in many cases. I feel like the plastic surgery options that we have, the psychological care access that we have, I think that you could deal and you could cope and you could manage your gender dysphoria if you are doing the puberty blockers to stall your puberty and until you're in your late teens, early adulthood. My personal belief. Now, keep in mind that my belief is based on my experience as well. And in my experience, I had a late puberty. I didn't start estrogen until my early 20s. But I didn't really start going through puberty until my late teens. For a lot of people, they start going through puberty, especially people with a more aggressive puberty. They start going through puberty in earlier adolescence, 10, 11, 12 years old. I didn't have that experience. We'll get into it more. We'll get into it more though. We'll get into more of those teas. But she was given that video. She was talking. She was just giving informing the medical professionals that, you know, the rules have changed a bit, and that, you know, depending on the child, they could start testosterone or estrogen at 14 years old. All right, Matt, this is our last post from Matt's thread, honey, because I really can't believe that Matt's thread, that this dummy really propelled this whole system of laws that's being considered in this country. The biggest topic of our election is going to be this post, what Matt posted, this thread. So Matt insists that after the kids have been drugged and sterilized, Vanderbilt then performs double mastectomies on adolescent girls. Let's get into the video.
So when we talk about the WPATH guidelines, so in order for our patients to really successfully undergo these surgeries, we do, again, follow these guidelines. So a lot of times it's for insurance purposes, but again, insurances kind of follow suit with the WPATH guidelines for the most part. So for any kind of top surgery, we do require one letter of persistent, well-documented gender dysphoria by a licensed mental health provider. We ensure that the patient is capable of making fully informed decisions on their own. They're the age of majority. However, for a lot of our younger patients, again, if they are 16, 17, here at Vanderbilt, if they have been on testosterone, have a parental consent, we're able to do a lot of the top surgeries for those patients.
All right, she's breaking down the changes. The whole point of this lecture was she was breaking down the changes in the laws regarding people being able to get top surgery. There are different requirements for top surgeries than there are for bottom surgeries. Number one, bottom surgeries aren't even considered for children in this country. Again, bottom surgeries aren't even considered for children in this country at all, of any age. You have to be at least 18 years old to get bottom surgery. And bottom surgery requires, for all who don't know, that's any type of genital surgery, any type of transitory genital surgery. Bottom surgery requires the most extensive of the psychological treatments. That's like the most safeguarded of all of the trans surgeries, which I agree that it should be. I'm a little blown away. I'm a little taken aback that the laws in Tennessee were what they were. The last I checked, in Maryland, you needed at least 2 psychiatric professionals to sign out outside of the people who are going to do the surgery, in order for you to even be considered, before they would even schedule you for a consultation. You had to have at least 2 sign-offs from psychiatric professionals. So that blew me away a little bit, that one psychiatric professional could sign off. I personally, as a psychiatric professional, wouldn't feel comfortable having somebody, especially a child's, gender affirming surgery, irreversible surgery in my hands. I wouldn't feel comfortable with that. Top surgeries are more reversible for male to female trans, getting breast implants, getting bags, silicone bags, you know, they can be taken out, you know, and you can also have liposuction and you know, chest lifts and skin grafting and stuff done to get rid of the excess flesh and skin. For a lot of detransitioners who are male to female who have gotten breast surgery, who I know personally, and I don't know many, I know one. And I know a lot of trans people. I know one person, male to female, who's detransitions. Yeah, you get the bags taken out and you're fine. Now, if you had severe breast development from hormone therapy, then you may have to have a double mastectomy to have a flat chest. Again, these are all things that I'm not scared to say publicly, because these are all things that trans people need to know and be aware of. A lot of things regarding transition are irreversible. If you're female to male, honey, that voice ain't going. Once that voice is deep, she's deep, honey. Baby, you going to have to do some vocal therapy, and you still going to sound like, you know, me or Maya Angelou or Eartha Kitt or some damn body. Ciao. But instead of a medical professional like me being able to change and potentially propel laws regarding trans people, you know, a medical professional of trans experience who has had most, if not all, of these medical procedures done to me personally, instead of them asking people like me my opinion, instead of them checking for my opinion, because it's all over the internet, they go to people like Matt Walsh. Matt Walsh, the theocratic fascist. For all of the kids in the back of the class who don't know what a theocratic fascist is, I know y'all probably hear fascist a lot. I'm going to break it down for you. A theocratic fascist, a term has been used to describe organizations and movements that combine religious elements with fascism, receive support from religious organizations which espouse sympathy for fascism or fascist regimes, in which clergy play a leading role. Yes, honey. Yes, I needed some milk on that last one. It was too many S's, honey. My accents don't work well with all them jeans and salad beans. But a theocratic fascist is basically a fascist who believes that the government should run what all of the citizens do. The government should be in control of what all of the citizens do, but the government should also be run by a particular religion. Matt Walsh says that he is a theocratic fascist. He claims that title. A fascist is a way of organizing a society in which a government ruled by a dictator controls the lives of the people, in which people are not allowed to disagree with the government. That's a fascist alone. Ruled by a dictator. A government ruled by a dictator. People are not allowed to disagree with the government. That's a fascist. Matt Walsh is a theocratic fascist, which means that he believes that the government should be ruled by a dictator, should control the way the people live. The people shouldn't be able to disagree with the government, and the government should be religious based. The issue with that is that we as humans never can agree on one religion. So what religion do you think Matt would have the U.S. being ran under? Take a wild guess, honey. I keep telling y'all, if y'all ain't seen The Handmaid's Tale, y'all better go ahead, because the United States is turning into Gilead. I told y'all I got my passport on the way, honey. Don't act surprised when I roll out. Matt, the theocratic fascist, Matt, who says that the government should be ruled by a dictator, a religious dictator. Matt is the one who they trusted to do the investigation on Vanderbilt and Nashville. The religious ruler, the religious dictator. Bitch, I keep telling y'all, honey. If y'all ain't getting into the tea now, honey, when y'all living in the Hunger Games, y'all gonna look back on this video like, oh, Bre Starr was on or something. Oh, Jesus what? So Matt does this thread, right? And of course, that gets a lot of people riled up. And that was last year, September. That was September 2022. He was getting the people riled up about speeches made from medical professionals in 2017 regarding trans care. Shout out to Obama. Obama was the one who allowed us to get all of that trans care in place, trans health care in place. And by the time we get to Biden, they trying to take it. No, they're not trying. They did. Vanderbilt was shut down. Vanderbilt, but the university, the medical center is still there. The trans clinic is no longer there. The trans clinic is no longer there. And this was something else that had an effect on it too. We can't give Matt all the credit. Matt picks up a lot of his notes from a queer white woman, Miss Jamie Reed. This was in February 2023 when she released her memoir about how she regretted working in trans healthcare. Her memoir, Miss Jamie Reed. Miss Jamie Reed has a transgender husband. Miss Jamie Reed has a transgender husband. Y'all heard what I said. Her transgender husband is helping to raise all of her biological children. And they have a couple of adopted ones. Now, Jamie released this statement. Jamie had gave a dramatic expose about the medical clinic that she was working at. Trying to find out the name of the place she was working at. She may not. Okay. Jamie was working at Washington University School of Medicine, Division of Infectious Diseases. And then she ended up working with the transgender children over there. Jamie made a couple of points. In Jamie's expose, she talked about how she felt like the transgender kids weren't aware of all of the side effects that came along with the medications, with the puberty blockers, and with the cross-sex hormone therapy. The biggest thing is sterility. The biggest thing is infertility. Putting someone in a position where they won't be able to produce children naturally, right? A lot of kids aren't going to understand that. I agree, a lot of kids aren't going to be able to process that, and that's why I have my beliefs regarding cross-sex hormone therapy. I think that it shouldn't be an option for children as well. I think the earliest you should be able to get it is 17 or 18, 17 in a special case. But also keep in mind that I'm not somebody who's ever dealt with severe gender dysphoria. Compared to a lot of people I know and a lot of people I've treated, my gender dysphoria has been pretty mild. But also keep in mind that I went through a late puberty. So by the time I started hormone therapy, that would have been like the average person starting hormone therapy as a late teen. Jamie Reed also talked about her disgust in the irreversible double mastectomy, aka top surgery for transmasculine individuals. this surgery is irreversible in the sense that if at some point somebody assigned female at birth wanted to be able to breastfeed, they wouldn't. If they wanted to detransition, the possibility of having big breasts won't exist. Even if you get implants, they will only be able to be a certain size because of the chest constriction, the lack of skin and tissue that's now there to support the implant. So yeah, so points were made. Points were made. Something that Jamie also discussed that kind of blew my mind. She discussed how in this particular facility, they neglected other mental illnesses that could have caused people to want to be trans. I'm going to quote the article directly. Besides teenage girls, another new group was referred to us, young people from the inpatient psychiatric unit or the emergency department of St. Louis Children's Hospital. The mental health of these kids was deeply concerning. There were diagnoses like schizophrenia, PTSD, bipolar disorder, and more. Often they were already on a fistful of pharmaceuticals. This was tragic but unsurprising given the profound trauma some had been through. Yet no matter how much suffering or pain a child had endured, or how little treatment and love they had received, our doctors viewed gender transition, even with all the expense and hardship it entailed, as the solution. Some weeks it felt as though almost our entire caseload was nothing but disturbed young people. Again, Jamie made some points. It's a couple points made there. Trans people, especially younger trans people, especially younger people questioning their gender identity and their gender presentation, they're very likely going to deal with some mental health issues, even if it's nothing more than unmanaged trauma from living in a transphobic society. When you're Black and you grow up in an inherently racist society, you will experience trauma just living in that society. It's the same for trans folks. When you're transgender and you're born and raised and navigate through a transphobic society, you will experience trauma. And yes, gender nonconforming kids, gender questioning kids, trans kids do experience trauma very young, which is why the psychological aspect of transitioning for a lot of people is more difficult than the physical transition. And I can tell you that from personal experience. So Jamie made some points. And I'll give Jamie the floor. And it's very possible that Jamie was working in a facility that was unhealthy for all children. There's a possibility that Jamie was working in a facility where they wanted to experiment on children. It's possible that Jamie was working in a facility where they were not experienced or educated enough with trans people to properly treat trans children. This is one of the reasons I went into healthcare as a trans person. It's the reason that all of the trans people I know in healthcare went into healthcare, so that we could actually protect our rights, protect ourselves, and protect our community from within the healthcare system. Yeah. I can imagine, just like with any other marginalized community, there will be some places that take advantage. So I'll give it to Jamie. Jamie, maybe you're absolutely right. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Maybe the place that you worked for was trash. But that's not who Matt got investigated. You talking about what's going on over there in St. Louis, Washington, and all that. Honey, Matt done got Vanderbilt and Nashville investigated, honey. Baby, honey. And mind you, Jamie's article came out after Matt already got this BS started. Jamie's article came out February this year. Matt got all this started last year, September. Child. So, honey, here is Matt and the former, now fired colonizer.
Well, Vanderbilt Hospital, I mean, we reached out for a statement when we first published the report, and at first they didn't want to give a statement, and they actually just took down, as you mentioned, they just deleted, that's what people have to understand, they deleted their entire transgender clinic website. They wiped it from existence. And then today,
I already told y'all the tea on that. They deleted the transgender website because they knew that they were being came for. They knew that the law was coming for them. They wanted to be able to protect not only their transgender patients, but also their transgender staff. But keep going, Matt.
not to us, but in general, they released a statement. And the interesting thing about the statement they released is that they do not, while they start by claiming there's misinformation and so on, they don't actually factually dispute anything in my report because they can't, because everything that I said wasn't me saying it. I was just providing video evidence, much of which you played there. Well, we know for a fact this.
Matt, you provided video snippets that didn't give the full context of the medical conversations. Matt, that's what you did, Matt. And Matt, you missed a whole lot of points because you was busy trying to vilify these people who was offering trans healthcare. Keep in mind that the trans healthcare providers are not trans. They're only going by what they taught. They're only going by what they know. And that's why y'all need to listen to us trans people.
This is an absolute fact that Vanderbilt, they perform double mastectomies on minor girls, on children. They chemically castrate children, and they give them irreversible.
Okay, Matt, let's talk about the double mastectomies. My own view on the double mastectomies, they should not be done on people under 18. They should not be done on people under 18. This is another reason why puberty blockers needs to be offered for children. I feel that puberty blockers should be offered for children as soon as they start going through puberty, if they experience the necessary, if they fit the criteria. If they experience the necessary feelings, dysphoria, then yes, they can go on puberty blockers. They can go on puberty blockers, have a word with the puberty blockers until you turn 18. Then you're old enough to start being able to consider and make decisions about procreating and irreversible changes to your body. Because to keep it 100, from a pro-trans standpoint, which honestly I always am, y'all just don't see it. But from a pro-trans standpoint, there are a lot of us trans people who did develop secondary sex characteristics of our sex assigned at birth, our gender assigned at birth, and we're not mad at it. There's a lot of girls, all of the trans models wouldn't have their contracts if they wasn't tall enough. So yeah, I say all that just to say I agree with Matt on the double mastectomies. But if you allow children puberty blockers, they won't need double mastectomies. That will stall and pause breast development until they're an adult, and they can make a decision then whether they want to develop breasts or whether they don't. From my understanding, if a child is treated properly with hormone therapy when experiencing the required gender dysphoria, surgeries aren't necessary for them to pass. Those tend to be the trans people who never get surgery and never get clogs because they went to high school as their assigned gender, as their gender assigned by themselves. So I agree with Matt on that one, on the double mastectomies. Matt, you might have made one point, but you didn't make the full point, Matt, because Matt trying to prevent people from using puberty blockers. And if they don't use puberty blockers, then that's going to be more money spent by the insurance companies because everybody going to have to get double mastectomies.
hormone drugs that change their bodies permanently. They're doing all of that to kids. And the other thing we should note, and I'm glad you mentioned all the other hospitals around the country, because the things I just mentioned, that's happening all across the country, in every single state, in many hospitals and in many other medical clinics. All of those things are happening. And one of the reasons why it's allowed to keep happening is because people don't know about it, because they're not talking about it. And I think for a lot of average Americans, people just walking down the street, it's sort of unthinkable. They can't imagine that this sort of thing is actually happening, but it is, which is why we have to start by raising awareness about it, and we have to do that no matter the game the left.
Okay, he's right again. I think Matt is right again, baby. Don't stone me, honey. Judge your mother. I think Matt is right again. We should have been had these conversations. But the reason trans people have always felt uncomfortable having these conversations is because we had a feeling that y'all were overreacting and doing exactly what y'all are doing now, attempting to take our rights from us instead of helping us get to a point that is fair. Fair for the people who questioning their gender identity. Fair for the people who deal with mental health issues that make them want to run and be accepted by the trans community. Matt Walsh is not only a theocratic fascist, but he's also one of the lead journalists for the Daily Wire.
Why don't you summarize for us, why you decided that you should step away from the Daily Wire?
They think they crossed the line for me that I was not willing to cross. I was uncomfortable with some of the videos that Matt Walsh put out a few weeks ago, so I was sort of looking for a way out. But then when Michael Knowles said during CPAC that we needed to eradicate transgenderism from public life, it was a really, really stupid choice of words. And you're going to scare the shit out of people when you say that.
Christina, his goal is to scare people. It's to scare trans people back in the closet. He knows exactly what he's doing. Christina, baby, when people show you who they are, believe them.
I mean, I think Matt Walsh said after this happened, why didn't I come to him? Like, I don't mean this to be insulting, but he's not a very approachable person. Like, I barely know him, and he had already made videos sort of doubling and tripling down on this position, so I don't really see how an employee would have changed that.
People like me, medical professionals of trans experience, our opinions and ideas were not involved in the evolution of these anti-trans bills. The opinions of people like Matt Walsh have been used to propel these anti-trans bills. And Matt Walsh has said himself that he wants to eradicate trans people.
It's not about eradicating transgenderism from public life. That's impossible. There's always going to be transgender adults. It's a fact of life. You can't lump them all together. There's people with gender dysphoria who are not ideologues. And we should respect people's decision, what they want to do with their life.
Unfortunately, this fight was never about the children. This fight was about being able to eradicate transgender people. This includes transgender adults. The whole point was to stop access to health care for all transgender people. Because if we don't have the access to the hormones and surgeries, we're all just going to look like drag kings and queens. And if you ask me, that was the goal. But even further than that, they've been trying to take away our ability to dress however we want to, i.e. the drag bans.
Detransitioners, their existence proves that gender identity is not fixed. And many of them are young women on the spectrum, like I am. We need a better evaluation process. We cannot just affirm everyone in their gender identity. Even WPATH's new standards of care recognize that people can be socially influenced to adopt a transgender identity. So it's the affirmative model of care. It's not the transgender community that's the problem. And I don't want to frame it like transgender people are the problem.
After trans health care became more available in this country, There have been a wave of people who have transitioned for the wrong reasons. There have been a group of people on the spectrum, as well as people who have dealt with other traumas. People who are attempting to navigate and figure out who they are while dealing with various social obstructions. There have also been a lot of detransitioners who have dealt with trauma, childhood trauma, and they have used transitioning as a way to cope, as a way to create alter personalities, or dissociate from reality altogether.
Yeah, I'm in this to change minds. I have a very specific goal. I want to do away with the affirmative model of care. I want more individualized assessments for people seeking transition services. I have no interest in the culture war.
And Christina's right. The trans healthcare model for children needs to be re-examined, very likely reformed. Matt isn't concerned about protecting the children. Matt wants to eradicate trans people, and he's using the children as an excuse to get a lot of other people on board.
I don't care what adults do. I think adults are affected, and that addressing specifically the affirmative model of care is going to solve a lot of problems, and we need to be able to have conversations about it.
Like me, Christina Buttons wants to talk about trans healthcare and children. We just want the people to have access to the proper healthcare for them, for all of them, trans or not.
Activists or transgender activists are trying to do away with what they believe is, medical gatekeeping. But part of that is actually like safeguarding and trying to find out if this treatment is actually going to be right for someone. So with the affirmative model of care, someone comes into their office and says, I think I'm transgender. And they affirm them and they say, you are transgender. Let's get you on some medications to help you feel better.
I am considered a transgender activist, and I do believe that there should be gatekeeping for gender-affirming medical treatment. Gender is a social construct. Hormone treatment and surgeries are not the only ways to manage and cope with gender dysphoria. Again, gender is a social construct, but gender is very psychosocial. It is also based on how we see ourselves. Therefore, I think a lot more psychological alternatives can be offered to transgender people, especially transgender kids who are still figuring out who they are.
I went through a lot of trials when I was a teenager with mental health, and I feel certain that I would have, if transgender ideology were in vogue when I was a teenager, I'm almost certain I would have believed I was transgender too. We're talking about girls on the spectrum who have trouble making friends. They don't understand why they feel different from others. When they're introduced to gender identity ideology, they think this explains everything. They become fixated. They latch on to the transgender community. They're accepted by the transgender community. You got to help people find the right treatment for them. And some of them will be transgender adults and some of them will be happy, and everybody just has to accept that. There's going to be trans adults. We're not doing away with them. I don't want to.
Long story short, the patients from the Vanderbilt Transgender Clinic have sued Vanderbilt. They're suing Vanderbilt for handing over their medical information to an entity that they did not give permission. It should absolutely be your right to know who has access to your medical information. Vanderbilt did not redact any of the medical files before turning them into the state. Vanderbilt also did not reach out to any of the patients to inform them that their records would be shared with the state. I think they absolutely have a case. I think they absolutely have a lawsuit. And any of the transgender people who want to share their money with me, y'all see that Cash App? Y'all see that Cash App on it? I thank you in advance. But let me know in the comments, how do you feel? If you were a patient of the Vanderbilt Clinic, would you sue? If your doctor handed over your medical paperwork without your approval to somebody you didn't know, would you be upset? Let me know in the comments. Mel said it's 1.6 million. Thank you. 1.6 million trans people. And less than 1% of them detransition. So it's a possibility, but it's a very small possibility. So Mel says, I feel like the laws made for trans is not made for black trans, but it's my opinion. Mel, you made a point. And when I was talking about Jamie Reed and the expose that she did, the place that she worked, the place that she said, was essentially throwing hormones and surgery at trans kids, they only had one black patient that Jamie remembers. So all the rest of the trans kids that they were treating, all of these trans kids who were running to the trans community because it was a trend, or running to the trans community for acceptance, they were all white kids except one. So Mel, you might have a point. Mel also says, I'm bringing up the debate that I feel like the trans women get more negative reactions than trans men, and it's bringing me to the double standard. People who accept trans women, accept two women together, but not two men. People definitely accept gender variance and sexual variance in people who are assigned female at birth. People definitely, in this society, in American society, people are more accepting of people assigned female at birth being sexually variant and gender variant. If you're assigned male at birth, especially in the black community, those laws and rules are a lot more strict for you.